The latest One Piece chapter has really revealed more than we expected. And honestly, it's raised some of the most significant questions we've had since we first saw Blackbeard root to Devil Fruits. On one hand, we might have just gotten confirmation of who's attacking Mariejois. And more importantly, why? But even deeper than that, this chapter may have finally given us the long-awaited answer to why Teach was waiting for the Dark fruit to resurface, and why he orchestrated everything that happened at Marineford. But before I lose my mind trying to piece all this together, let me calm down, because everything needs to be unpacked in the right order. Firstly, this chapter continues exactly where we left off, with the Dark King Silver's Ray Lee showing us just how divine his Reese game truly is. Now, this man didn't just pull any woman, he secured the primary prize of the Rocks Pirates and the Roger Pirates, Shaki. And here, Oda finally decides to show us who exactly won her heart, and in the process, how Roger lost her. As the chapter progresses, we learn that the Roger Pirates were on the run, chasing treasure on the way, but they were just literally trying to escape after getting Shaki. They were nowhere near Rocks or the God's Knights. With the Navy in front of them and the Rocks Pirates behind, the situation becomes clearer than ever. This detail is huge, because it means Roger and Garp are finally beating the allegations of being tyrants who were trying to stop Xebec from saving his family. We see now that they weren't even concerned with whatever Rocks was plotting on that island. Their goal wasn't conquest or intervention, it was survival, chaos, and circumstance colliding. So the thing is, I love the small detail where Shiki just casually tells off one of his crewmates for wanting to launch a direct attack on the Roger Pirates, because it might put Shaki in harm's way. That tiny exchange adds so much depth to this era. Even among the most dangerous crew in the world, there's still a trace of camaraderie, of human attachment. These monsters, for all their bloodlust and ego, still have lines they won't cross. It's classic Oda giving us chaos, but with heart. We then cut to a panel showing Xebec on the run, flanked by Teach and Aris. Now, I know there's a ton happening before this point, but if I lingered on every single page, we'd be here forever. And this chapter deserves focus where it matters most. Long story short, we finally learned the hilarious truth about how Kaido actually got his devil fruit from Big Mom. Now, we all remember that Ivankov was originally the one who managed to get their hands on the Uo Uo no Mi, but Lin Lin took it from him. And here's the funny part, like the really funny part. The long-standing image most fans had was that Kaido was defeated and Big Mom, in an almost maternal act, gave him the fruit, saving his life in the process. I mean, with the way she told it, yeah, she kind of painted that picture. But instead, what Oda gives us is just pure comedy. It turns out Lin Lin had no intention of keeping her promise to Kaido. She planned to feed the fruit to a young Katakuri. That's right, Kaido's legendary fruit was meant for Big Mom's own son. And you know what, I swear sometimes you just have to feel bad for the Charlotte kids, man. Like, from day one, Lin Lin never really cared about her children. She cared about power. I mean, looking back, every one of them was a pawn in her endless obsession with building the strongest crew alive. But Kaido? Nah, Kaido had other plans. He straight up stole the fruit back, clubbing Big Mom in the face and devouring it mid-air without hesitation. That's the most Kaido thing imaginable. It's savage, reckless, and completely in character. And it changes how we see their entire dynamic. But let's circle back. Because what happens next with Xebec is far more important. We learn that Xebec was entirely focused on getting his family off the island. And that right there reframes everything. Because once the world government discovered that God Valley was housing their worst enemy's entire family, it became a no-brainer. Every resource was redirected toward his elimination. Just like Ace's fate was sealed because of who his father was, it's clear that Teach and Aris were never meant to leave that island alive. And here's where it gets even crazier. We learn that they were members of the Davy clan. Now, that's a name loaded with history and a lot of mystery. And the moment Oda shows us that giant straw hat on Xebec's pops, it becomes very tempting to connect the dots. Because what if, and I really mean what if, the Davy clan is the origin of the Wheel of D? Don't get me wrong, it's just one possibility. But Xebec himself makes it clear, if anyone from the Davy clan is captured, they will face a fate worse than hell itself. That line alone speaks volumes. It's not just about power, it's about persecution, legacy, and a secret that the world government has tried to erase for centuries. So the real question becomes, is this the famous D clan? Well, that's where things get complicated. In past videos, I speculated that the D was split, that there were two factions of this ancient lineage, and honestly, this chapter might have just confirmed it. And I'm here to collect today, because this right here is the other half of the D. Now, of course, questions still arise. Is it Joy Boy's half, or are they one and the same? Because that's still uncertain. Personally, I think it's possible Davy Jones was Joy Boy's real name. Now, I know you're angry with me right now because I'm throwing around ideas left and right, but it's really confusing up here sometimes. Now, if they are one and the same, which I highly doubt, it would mean his crew, the original bearers of the D, each carried his first initial as a mark of allegiance or of freedom. But over time, the ideology fractured. Two factions probably emerged, separated by belief. And I still stand by what I've said before. Joy Boy forged an alliance with Imu, one that ultimately led to the destruction of the Davy clan, and all who carried the mark of D, whether Davy or Don. In the end, they all lost. Teach then becomes the inheritor of their legacy, the last ember of a forgotten bloodline. Much like the Buccaneers, the Davy clan possessed special bodies, the original vessels capable of wielding the power that would one day be called the Devil Fruits, and their innate connection to Haki. That's, I guess you could say that's one piece of the puzzle covered. See what I did there? Because in this next panel, we see something even more disturbing. Imu transforming the Davy clan into demonic underlings, twisted and enslaved in the same way the people of Elbaf are being manipulated right now. It's a haunting parallel, and it makes you wonder if history isn't just repeating itself. Now, the way this chapter ends, we all know, well, it's gonna be tragic. We are about to finally see Rox Xebecs' downfall, and yet, it's not the kind of death you can just brush off as another villain's end, because, well, he really wasn't a villain. It's the kind of ending that changes context, because Xebec wasn't just defeated, he was forced to kill his entire family. And that right there is what gives me the confidence that the outcome on Elbaf will be different. Xebec was a man who had the will to fight the gods, the courage to stand against fate, but he lacked one thing, the power of the Nika fruit. And as this chapter implies, that fruit holds the divine ability to reverse the demonic transformations that Imu inflicts upon their victims. But that begs the question, was the Nika fruit the fruit Xebec was searching for all along? I'd say yes, it fits perfectly. The fruit of liberation, the one power capable of undoing the shackles placed on the world. And you know, it's really an alluring idea, and a logical one. But here's the part where I'll probably sound insane to some of you, and I know I'm going to catch heat for this, but Xebec doesn't strike me as the Nika type. Then you could say, maybe that's the reason he wanted her to devour this fruit. But that's a maybe. And you know, I'm really sorry, but he doesn't have that light, you know? Xebec's strength came from fury, you know, from defiance, not joy. The Nika fruit by its nature is the embodiment of freedom through laughter. Xebec wasn't that. He was rage incarnate. Not to mention, this fruit eluded a lot of people for a long time, for centuries probably. So that would mean that Xebec was not the man that Joy Boy was waiting for. And that's exactly what sets up the next part. The fruits that Teach stole. Because unlike Xebec, Teach isn't his father's son in spirit. He lies, cheats, and steals. From the world, from others, and even from his own crew. His greed is his guiding principle. Yet it's also what makes him the perfect inheritor of Xebec's ambition. And Oda subtly parallels this beautifully. On one side of the page, we see Aris running with Teach in her arms. And on the other, Dragon saving a baby Shanks. Two children, two destinies, both decided from birth. Their fathers, mortal enemies, shaped the world around them through opposing ideals. It's a small moment, but it's one that breathes life into Doflamingo's speech. Then comes the bombshell. This chapter confirms that Dragon is not the one attacking Mariejois right now. It's Teach. And the reason is absolutely insane. Now, for those who've seen my previous breakdowns, you will remember when I discussed Imu's power, the connection between the Locker and the Abyss, and how that all ties into why Blackbeard hunted the Yami Yami Nomi. But what I didn't cover back then, what I didn't realize until now, was the true purpose behind Teach's desperate pursuit of the Gura Gura Nomi. Back then, I mentioned something offhand that now feels prophetic. I said, and yeah, I'll sound like a little douche for this, but Rox was after the soul of the world. Turns out, that was literal. Because in this chapter, Xebec refers to the entity in the sky, to Imu, as the world. And suddenly, everything just clicked. For a while now, one of the most popular theories in the community has been that the red line is the corpse of the ancient serpent from the First Age, a divine creature whose fall divided the seas. But this is more metaphorical. And now the theory doesn't just sound plausible, it feels validated. Why does Imu insist on placing the celestial dragons atop the giant? Why is the home of the gods perched on the highest point of the world? I mean, the answer might be obvious, but it's not for luxury. It's not symbolism alone. It's containment. Because beneath Mariejois lies something ancient, something alive or not. In a previous video, I said the dark fruit allows Teach to access the abyss, the same place where souls and powers intertwine. That's a secret for extracting devil fruit abilities. And if that's true, then Imu's method works similarly. They grant powers by channeling that same abyssal energy. But here's the twist. Imu has no physical body. What they use isn't their power. It's borrowed. Imu is a vessel. Imu is a vessel for something. And that changes everything. Teach's motive becomes crystal clear because what is the Gura Gura Nomi known for? The power to destroy the world. But what if that doesn't just mean splitting continents or sinking islands? What if it literally means destroying the world's foundation, the red line, and specifically Mariejois, the pressure point and final resting place of Davy Jones? Yes, Davy Jones. The being or corpse Imu has been using to access the abyss. Because this isn't just about devil fruits anymore. This is about something older. We've seen that Haki itself carries greater might than any fruit. Even after 800 years, the echo of a powerful will can still repel divine forces, reversing their abyssal powers. And that's where things get here. During Luffy's battle against the Gorosei, the ancient robot awakens, right? Channeling Joy Boy's Haki, and it forcibly reverses the abyss power being used against him. That's not a coincidence, that's two sides of the same coin. Think of artificial devil fruits, copies made to imitate the real thing. Now apply that logic to Imu. Imu's entire existence may be artificial, sustained through a power buried beneath Mariejois. A corpse, an ancient soul, something tied to the world's first abyss. And if that's true, then Teach's plan makes perfect sense. He wants to use the dark fruit to extract whatever lies beneath Mariejois, to reap the source of Imu's power out of the earth itself, to destroy the very world. Whatever it is, corpse, god, or monster, it's the key to everything. And Xebec, he almost had it. Of course, these are theories, but they might not stay that way for long. Because if this chapter is even half as intentional as it seems, then the lines between speculation and revelation are already starting to blur. It's not that uncommon for the ancient races to possess unique or divine traits. And almost every lineage connected to the D carries some trace of that heritage. The Buccaneers, devout followers of Nika, they come from the First Age. The Davy clan from the Second Age, and possibly even the First. And then the Dawn, the inheritors of a broken promise in the Third. But what makes everything clearer now is that we are faced with two distinct possibilities. The first, that D itself only represents Davy Jones, the man, the myth, the captain whose initial became a symbol of rebellion, but the race tied to him is a separate matter entirely. Because if Xebecs words were referring to the famous D clan we know, men like Dragon, Garp, Roger, and even so, then logically they should have been executed or experimented on long ago. His description paints a picture of a level of persecution equal to what Buccaneers suffered, an existence outlawed by blood itself. So the fact that these figures were able to live, rise, and even serve in the Navy suggests something crucial. The Davy Jones crew may have carried his initial but not his blood. Their descendants inherited a name, a will, but not the body. They carried the spirit of D, but not the genetic burden that made the Davy clan a threat to Imu's world. And that leads to the second possibility, which frankly feels more and more convincing with every chapter, that the D clan was split into two ideological factions, Joy Boy, a literal person, and Davy Jones, another person, two opposing visions of freedom, one rooted in laughter, the other in defiance. And this theory is carrying more validity than I ever thought it would, because if we follow that line, then Teach might not just be another pirate chasing power. He could be a descendant of the first ancient kingdom itself. And suddenly, Vegapunk's words echo with new meaning. It's not clear who was on the right side of history. The wars of the past, the first, second, and now this third age, were never about moral battles or anything like that. They were resource wars, ideological wars, conflicts fought between gods, kings, and the people caught in between. Where Nerona Imu stood during the first conflict remains unclear, but in the second age, when Davy Jones fell and the seas were cursed, her stance becomes unmistakable. Now, let's pause here, because I need to acknowledge something everyone seems to be skipping over. Garp's reaction. When he says, "I don't know what justice is anymore," that's not a throwaway line. That's a man who just realized the system he devoted his life to was rotten. He didn't know about the games the Celestial Dragons were hosting at God Valley. He didn't know that innocent people were being hunted for sport. That moment, that dreamlike horror, it was his awakening. And as bombs rained down and civilians begging for mercy, Garp's words carried more than guilt. They carried resolve. Because on that day, amid the chaos and betrayal, I believe something new was born. If this chapter doesn't confirm it, I don't know what does. But this was, and keep an open mind, this was the birth of Sword. Garp became its founder, the quiet rebellion within the system. And on that same day, Imu unknowingly created the tools of their own destruction. From this single tragedy, 3 flames were lit. Roger, who dedicated his life to uncovering the truth behind the Void Century and preparing the way for the next coming of Nika. Whitebeard, who would carry the torch of inherited will protecting the next generation, reigniting the flame that Roger left. And Luffy, whose existence safeguarded by those before him, would one day reignite the era of dreams. This event was the tragedy that birthed Blackbeard, the spark that forged Sword, and the catalyst that set the world ablaze. The end of this chapter doesn't set up a clash between Roger, Garp, Rocks, Whitebeard, and Kaido. No, I really don't believe that. It hints at something far greater. A royal rumble not between pirates and marines, but against Imu themselves. And in the aftermath of that battle, history was rewritten. And it was to cover their failure, to hide their presence. The world created the legend of a false hero, the man who saved God Valley, but failed to protect the civilians. The myth of Garp the hero was born that day, not from triumph, but from tragedy. And quietly in the background as the smoke settled and history was erased, Ares and Teach survived. Well, we don't really have a confirmation on this yet, but I can bet on that too. And I'll say this now, I believe Kuma saved them. But that's a story for another day. But when we return to that topic, it might just reshape everything we know about God Valley, Imu, and the true beginning of the world that we are witnessing now.